We got attack on the Pearl Harbor 1941. I don't know too much about Pearl Harbor. Never checked out a video on it. I obviously know what Pearl Harbor is and what kind of happened there. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting video. Let's jump straight into this, man.
About the 27-yard line. Cruiser Kennard made the tackle. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Stay tuned to WOR for further development.
America and other nations have imposed an oil embargo on Japan, which means Japan cannot continue their conquests. No problem. Japan would just get the oil it needs from the Dutch Indies. Their underfunded and undergunned fleet will pose no threat to the Imperial Japanese Navy. And if their ally, Great Britain, joins the conflict, well, Japan will fight them too. Both nations are too occupied with the European war anyways. So, through their new conquests, Japan's demand for resources shall be met. However, geography has cursed them. Look at what lays beside their vital supply lines. The Philippines, a US territory. Although America is not officially allied with the British and the Dutch, they are on friendly terms. Japan cannot afford the risk of the US entering the war while they are in the midst of their campaign.
Right.
Their proximity to Japan's supply lines puts into jeopardy everything they are about to fight for. Basically, the Americans would be holding a dagger to Japan's throat the entire time they conduct their campaign.
Yeah, they could just cut them off right there.
Ready to commence hostilities at a moment's notice. Thus, they come to the conclusion that they must take out the Americans as well. This calls not only for an invasion of the Philippines, but also a preemptive strike on the powerful American fleet at Pearl Harbor. And so with that, history was set. Japan set its powerful Kido Butai to strike Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7th. Now, the goal of the raids was as follows. 1. Sink a battleship. This was for propaganda purposes. Japan reasoned that if America saw their beloved battleships, symbols of their naval power, destroyed, their will to wage war against Japan would be shattered as well.
Right.
2. Immobilize the fleet for 6 months. The Japanese estimated that they needed 6 months to do all of their conquests. Then they would be on the defensive and await the American counterattacks and wear them down, culminating in a decisive naval clash.
Wait, what's this? Japan wanted a short-term war with the United States, a war that will hopefully end in a decisive naval clash, which I repeat over. Okay.
So note, the Japanese knew they could not win a long-term war with America, so Japanese strategy revolved on them waging a short-term war. This was why attacking the fuel tanks or naval facilities at Pearl Harbor was not even considered in the planning phase. It was irrelevant to the 6-month goal.
Right. That is
at
your
Pearl
goal.
Harbor were some 80 ships. There were 8 battleships, 7 of them in battleship role and 1 in dry dock. 8 cruisers were at Pearl Harbor, 4 of which were accessible to torpedoes, and dozens of destroyers and auxiliaries were docked elsewhere. Unfortunately for the Japanese, the 3 American carriers were all at sea and not in port that fateful day. The attack on Pearl Harbor would be carried out by 6 fleet carriers and its strike force of 350 planes.
Jesus.
Their crews had endured 10 months of training for this attack. In addition, 5 midget submarines would be tasked with penetrating the harbor and attacking in conjunction with the main airstrike. The attack would be composed of 2 waves. During the first wave, Lieutenant Fuchida commanded a strike against the ships in the harbor. The key to the first wave was the 50 level bombers and 40 torpedo bombers, also known as Kates. Their
50 armed with 800 kilogram bomb and 40 with Type 91.
torpedoes had been modified with wooden fins so that they could be effective in the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. Their priority targets were the battleships and carriers at port. The first wave of 183 aircraft was launched at 6 a.m. The strike force approached Oahu and soon the formation separated into groups to attack their assigned airfields and targets. The sky was completely clear of American fighters. The Japanese had achieved complete surprise.
Oh, wow.
The dive bombers beat the torpedo bombers to Pearl Harbor, the first bombs hitting the southern tip of Fort Island minutes before even the first torpedo had been launched. Planes from Hiru and Soryu approached at 7:55. They were disappointed to discover that their targets, the carriers, were not in port that day. Lieutenant Nagai, leader of Soryu's air group, realized there were no potential targets, so he and his wingman pulled off. However, the remaining 6 attacked. They probably mistook the old decommissioned battleship, the USS Utah, as a capital ship, and they fired upon her. 2 torpedoes slammed into her before 8 a.m. The rest missed. One missed so badly that the USS Raleigh was hit. The Utah capsized at 8:12.
Yo, they missed so badly they just hit this instead?
The Raleigh almost suffered a similar fate, but prompt damage control prevented her from capsizing.
Oh my god.
Nagai went around Ford Island and launched against what he believed was a battleship. In reality, it was just a cruiser, the USS Helena. She was double berthed.
Do you know what? Like, they seem like they're doing this with ease right now. Did America not have like any defense on the harbor? Like any because like, did it not get any gist of tensions with Japan and stuff at this like moment in time? Would it?
With an old mine layer. The
Not
Oglala.
expect this to happen at all.
Its silhouette probably gave the impression of a battleship. His torpedo actually went under Oglala's heel and exploded into Helena's hull, damaging both ships. Nagai's wingman recognized that it was just a cruiser and decided to attack Battleship Row instead. The 8 Hiru planes didn't fare any better. Lieutenant Hirata and his wingman saw that there were no viable targets, so they headed for Battleship Row. However, the remaining 6 aircraft who were lagging behind got to see Nagai's attack on Helena and followed suit. 4 launched torpedoes, but they all missed terribly. The last pair aborted their run at the last minute.
Oh my god, just
headed for the
completely
battleship.
missed.
So now we have 4 Hiru and 1 Soryu plane maneuvering for Battleship Row, cutting right across the path of the other 24 torpedo bombers who are just coming in. In this photograph, you can see the opening stages of the attack. Both the Utah and Raleigh have been hit, and Utah is listing to port. At this moment, the torpedo runs against the battleships have begun. You can even spot 2 planes finishing their bomb runs.
Oh my god.
Due to the geography of Pearl Harbor, the torpedo bombers really just had one avenue of approach. If they had gone over the naval buildings, the turbulence would have thrown off their accuracy and limited their launch window.
Mate, they was missing anyway without the turbulence, so they may as well just done that.
Therefore, the overwhelming majority of the Cape bombers flew single file down the southeast lock. The result was that instead of the attack being spread out, it would be disproportionately concentrated on the southern tip of Battleship Row, much to Oklahoma's and West Virginia's despair. 12 Akagi planes approached single file, 1,000 feet apart, starting at 7:57. All of Akagi's 12 planes launched against these 2 battleships, except one, which skillfully maneuvered and struck the California. The 4 Hiru planes from before joined shortly afterwards and launched against Oklahoma and West Virginia. Contrary to belief, the Japanese were not attacking with impunity. The defenders had taken advantage of the precious minutes warning afforded by the Ford Island bomb blast, so that when the first torpedo planes of Akagi approached, many anti-aircraft gunners were already prepared. These vulnerable, slow-moving Kates had to make their torpedo runs under fire.
Right, here we go. Okay, so like, they was preparing from after the first set of 3 bombs. But like, I'm very surprised with America and having this stationed here, like Pearl Harbor, that they didn't have, they wasn't that ready. You know what I mean? Like, I know they didn't know that it was coming then. But after the first 3, I thought, boom, 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 they would get on the anti-aircraft gunners and whatever they had there and be ready for it. You know what I mean?
3 miles behind Akagi's strike was Kaga's air group. By now, the anti-aircraft fire was becoming more effective, and again, Oklahoma and West Virginia took the brunt of the attack. In the middle of their launch, that single Soryu plane from earlier swept in and got a hit on the California.
Oh, wow.
However, one of Kaga's plane veered to the right because of this, but was able to hit the Nevada at 8:03. Kaga's air group was the only one to suffer losses. 5 of the last 7 attacking Kates were shot down.
Aye.
In this historic photograph, the torpedo attack is perfectly captured. You can see the torpedo hits on the Oklahoma, West Virginia, and the California. All of them are gushing out oil. In the background, you can see Hickam Field burning, and the Helena can be seen leaning against the Oglala. And a Japanese plane can also be spotted.
Can barely see that, but
the attack wasn't executed as smoothly as hoped. An attack that should have taken less than 90 seconds stretched out over 11 minutes from first run to last. Some had to abort and redo their runs due to mutual interference, and the heavy anti-aircraft fire threw off the pilot's aim and caused them to over-concentrate on just 2 battleships.
Aye, so the whole attack was planned to be like 90 seconds, so maybe I'm not taking into account how quick this happened and came out the blue.
21 torpedoes were launched at Oklahoma and West Virginia, over half of the available torpedoes. Oklahoma had 12 torpedoes launched at her. 5 hit her, and she capsized in 15 minutes. West Virginia was hit by 7 torpedoes, but prompt counterflooding prevented her from capsizing, and she settled to the bottom. California should not have sunk from 2 torpedoes, but her hatches were open for inspection that morning, which contributed to her sinking. and she was abandoned due to fires, and when she was reboarded, it was too late. Of the 36 torpedoes launched, only 19 achieved hits. That's a 48% hit rate. 10,000 feet above came Fuchida and his high-level bombers. Their mission was to take out the inboard battleships inaccessible to torpedoes. They came in groups of 5. They released their salvos and scored an impressive 20% hit rate. Unfortunately for the Japanese, out of the 10 bomb hits, about 6 were low-order detonations or malfunctions. That is an outrageous 60% dud rate. The Japanese aviators were greatly let down by their weapons.
Wait, what is dud rate? What? I never heard
the
that.
damage could have been deadlier. However, the distribution was effective. California was missed, but 2 ineffective hits on Maryland were scored. Both West Virginia and the Tennessee were hit twice, and there were 2 additional collateral damage hits on the repair ship Vestal, moored outboard of the Arizona. Vestal suffered severe flooding and had to be beached afterwards. But all of these hits were overshadowed by the 2 hits on the USS Arizona. The first struck her aft on the quarterdeck, and another landed near her number 2 turret. It caused a magazine explosion, which exploded with a great force, and a tremendous fireball was seen. She split in half and sunk in the harbor, taking more than 1,000 sailors with her. Heavy fires burned for days. The explosion was actually caught on tape by Dr. Hackinson, who was on the hospital ship Solace.
Wait, no way. Oh my god. Oh wait, I was actually gonna say, like, there was definitely people on this. Does the ships not have like equipment to? Oh wait, no, the ships was the one with the plane equipment, right? 1,177 sailors went down with the Arizona. Half of the all the people who was killed that day came from this ship. Jesus, man. Holy.
Nevada was the only battleship not suffering heavy damage and capable of getting underway. She did so at 8:40 with the intention of heading out of the channel. Now, one of the mini-subs actually did make it into the harbor. The other 4 were unsuccessful. At 8:36, the sea tender, the USS Curtis, spotted a sub. The submarine fired at Curtis but missed. In return, the submarine was hit by a 5-inch shell. The destroyer Monaghan, which happened to be getting underway at this moment, saw the sub and approached with the intent to ram her. The sub turned and fired its last torpedo, which missed the destroyer. At 8:40, the sub was rammed and depth charged. She sunk with both crew members killed. 167 planes formed the attack of the second wave, of which 78 were dive bombers allocated to go against warships. Much was expected from these skilled pilots. However, their performance was disappointing. First, take a moment to see what they were up against. By now, the anti-aircraft defenses were up and ready to greet the dive bombers.
Right.
Couple this with the fact that there was a 70 to 90% low overcast, their accuracy was destined to be off. But most importantly, these pilots were guilty of poor target selection. This was their priority list. These dive bombers with their general purpose bombs were well suited for attacking the 8 cruisers left in Pearl Harbor. But during the attack, about roughly 30 attacked battleships, only 17 went for cruisers, 16 attacked destroyers, and 12 attacked auxiliaries. The attack began at 8:54. The USS Nevada was caught in its escape during the second wave. The prospect of sinking the ship in the channel and thus blocking access to Pearl Harbor was a very, very improbable outcome. However, the pilots couldn't resist the opportunity, so they attacked from 2 directions. 14 to 18 valves dropped against Nevada.
Jesus.
Nevada was hit 5 times by 9 o'clock. And at 9:10, she had to beach herself. This was the shining moment of the second wave. But it deserves to be criticized. Did they contribute to sinking a battleship? Yeah, but it was by the rarest of luck. Nevada succumbed not to Japanese bombs, but to poor material condition, critical design flaws, and a massively significant damage control mistake.
Okay.
And again, it still doesn't make it any wiser. The battleship should have been avoided. The attempt to sink Nevada in the channel was a waste of ordnance that could have been better employed against targets more vulnerable to their effects. 1 to 3 dive bombers went for California, scoring 1 hit. The USS Pennsylvania, the fleet's flagship, the only battleship in dock, was also poorly selected. 9 bombers went after her. She suffered only a single hit at 9:06. The real victims, though, were the 2 destroyers ahead of her. which received collateral damage. 2 hit the Cassin and 1 hit the Downs, heavily damaging both.
You got 9 bombers on a dock ship and you hit 1?
So there could be a cultural explanation to why the Japanese pilots went for battleships. These young 20-year-old pilots were going into the most significant battle in Japan's history. No one wanted to go back home and report that they attacked a simple cruiser or a destroyer.
Okay.
No way.
Makes sense.
They wanted to go for battleships.
Right.
Sticking true to their samurai spirit.
Makes
But
sense.
overall, the second wave attack was just scattered throughout Pearl Harbor, with many attacks missing their targets. A puzzling target selection was the destroyer USS Shaw, which was targeted by as many as 15 bombers. 3 bombs hit her, one of which unleashed a tremendous fireball. The reason to her being targeted was probably because she was in a floating dry dock and resembled a capital ship. On the west side, the Curtis, a sea tender, was inexplicably targeted. A damaged foul committed a suicide dive and crashed into her, and minutes later she was hit by a bomb. And lastly, the only hit on a top priority target was on the Raleigh. As many as 5 dive bombers went for her, still listing from that torpedo hit. She was hit once at 9:08. Also, we can add a near miss on the Honolulu, which caused minor damage. So only 1 hit and 1 damage near miss were achieved on the dive bomber's highest priority targets. Against the 55% accuracy rate achieved during their training, the pilots got only 15 hits. That's a rather disappointing 19% hit rate.
Yeah, that is actually wild how many bombers was attacking and how many bombs they release. And bro, they need better training, man.
It was a poor performance of the second wave. It contributed nothing substantial to the fleet in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Also, as in the case of the armor-piercing bombs, the general purpose bombs were deficient. But the second wave had the opportunity to be more damaging. Take for example the Phoenix here, a modern cruiser which was completely ignored by the second wave, not to mention the first wave of torpedo bombers. She was a suitable target.
Wait, what
Not
did
to
I
mention
say?
the first wave.
USS Phoenix would later be sold to the Argentinian Navy and become the ARA General Belgrano. Should be sunk during the Falcon. Okay.
Of torpedo bombers. She was a suitable target. But even more telling was the fact that the naval yard was basically ignored. 4 modern 10-ton cruisers were tied up here, all of them packed so closely together. One could hardly have missed anything of value had the attack been concentrated here. On top of this, these ships were in a very vulnerable position. Flammable materials were scattered throughout, hatches were open, fire main systems might have been isolated. A bomb hit here would have caused a tremendous fire and been particularly devastating.
Are you telling me that many bombers and no one went for that section right there?
And there was no smoke around this area at all.
What?
The Japanese missed a chance to deliver a more effective blow. Only about 10 dive bombers attacked this area, and as previously mentioned, only a damage near miss caused any damage whatsoever.
Jesus, man.
By 9:30, the attack was over. The attack left behind 2,335 people dead and another 1,178 wounded. Civilian casualties totaled 103, including 68 dead. 5 battleships have been sunk, but only 2 were permanent losses, the Arizona and the Oklahoma. The rest were repaired and served before the war's end. The other 3 battleships at Pearl Harbor suffered light damage. However, this attack didn't really cripple the Pacific Fleet. Soon the Japanese would realize that it wasn't these old, obsolete battleships that posed the real danger to them.
Well, yeah.
It was the carriers that they had missed. They would soon feel their vengeance half a year later. To the list we can add a target ship and a mine layer, and the repair ship Vestal, which was beached.
Jesus, I'm just watching this now. It just wasn't worth it, especially with how America retaliated. We all know how that happened. What happened then? Like, bro, like.
There was heavy to moderate damage to 3 destroyers, 2 light cruisers, and a sea tender. And there was light damage to a light cruiser. The Japanese also achieved great success on their strikes on the airfield spread out on Oahu. Over 160 planes were destroyed. They destroyed 2 to 3 times the number of aircraft that they had expected. The Japanese lost only 29 planes, 9 in the first wave, 20 in the second wave.
Oh, wow.
A testament to the Americans' quick air defense.
Right, yeah,
Also,
that makes sense. So 9 in the first wave, there wasn't, you know, not many Americans, but they didn't seem to be fighting that much. And then the second wave, they was prepared, they was ready for it. Take out 20.
None of Japan's 5 midget submarines made it back. Was the mission accomplished? Well, yes. All 4 battleships hit by torpedoes were out of the war for 6 months or more.
Okay.
And they had sunk 1 other battleship by bombs alone. And with that, the Kido Butai sailed back home, unscathed. World War II had just started for America, and the sneak attack left behind a temporary shocked nation, but a nation that afterwards would be resolved to finish the war with nothing less than a total victory on their side.
Right, of course.
The Japanese
America.
had awoken a sleeping giant.
They literally did. They actually did. But really interesting. It was actually good to watch this video and understand more about Pearl Harbor. I know the gist of what happened, but now I know exactly how the attack happened now. If you guys got anything to leave in the comment section, I'll be reading all the comments. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe for more content. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.